This is the Enjoyer Podcast. I'm your host, James Dixon. You might not know this because nobody on Meet the Press told you this on Sunday morning, but America right now is in the midst of a communist revolution led by the very people who should be protecting us. Worse is they're using our own tax money to do it. The money that doesn't come from your taxes comes instead from the money printer. And so that's a bill your grandkids will pay someday. The fruits of this revolution are mass illegal immigration, the literal flooding of our shores by third world people with third world mindsets and third world problems. These people have no native interest in America. They come with hands out and they're treated like little princelings. When's the last time you visited New York City? Pretty expensive, right? Well, if you'd come through the southern border, the flight would have been free, the hotel rooms would have been free, and you would have been given a free debit card to cover your day-to-day expenses. As Black people in Detroit and cities across America push impotently for reparations from slavery, that money is being spent to bring Julio down by your kid's schoolyard. Efforts are afoot to make unhumans of us all. This story is best told by my guest today, my friend and America's top ghostwriter, Joshua Lisec. Alongside Jack Posobiec, Joshua has published a book called Unhumans, The Secret History of Communist Revolutions and How to Crush Them. If you've not read Unhumans, you don't know what you don't know about the forces shaping your world right now. You don't know that when you dropped your kid off to college a few weeks ago, you were sending them to be reprogrammed with communist rhetoric. You didn't know that George Floyd's overdose was portrayed as a police killing due to the oppressed-oppressor dynamic that colors our news and even our history in America. You didn't know that your own church-taught willingness to love thy neighbor is being weaponized against you to bring dangerous people to your community so that that community is dismantled. If the communists do win, there will be no rich areas like Oakland County was when I was growing up. There will be no rich communities. There will be no good schools. The equity they propose works only in one way, by dragging down the top group. Communism does not lift all ships and does not purport to. It's a vehicle for the have-not, the loser, and the incel to bring down the powerful. If that sounds like America in 2024, you might want to hang around. Joshua Lisec is going to help us understand how we got here, and most importantly, how to push back. And not just how to fight back, but how to win. Joshua, it's my pleasure to have you on the Enjoyer Podcast today.
Thank you, James. It's my pleasure to be here.
Now, Joshua, you're an Ohio nationalist. You live in the Dayton area. I'm guessing you cheer for Ohio State. Despite it all, I got to start you with this one. What do you enjoy about Michigan?
What I enjoy about Michigan is I like the shores, the lakes. My grandmother lives there currently, and having visited, spent time at the various lakes and whatnot, the wildlife, fantastic experience. All up and down Interstate 75 and Interstate 70 near where I live, there are pure Michigan signs.
Yes.
And the wildlife experience, the natural experience, it certainly gives Ohio a run for our outdoor money.
I do think we're a competitor with Ohio as far as natural beauty goes. How did the Unhumans Project come about? How'd you come to partner with Jack Posobiec? And what hole in the marketplace is this book meant to fill?
Yes, so let's start with the hole first. Books that are on communism, the theory or the history of it, tend to be bone dry. And the reason they're bone dry is it is a focus on the past. This is what happened during the Bolshevik Revolution. Boring, happened in the past, the USSR is done for now, and communism is over, basically. Or it will focus on maybe lesser known periods of history, like the Communist Revolution that happened in Haiti, which most people don't know about. Haiti, of course, is in the news in my area, literally in the Dayton area. Our next door neighbor, Springfield, is having some aftermath of the Haitian Communist Revolution consequences. We will call it that, as part of our own irregular communist revolution, which we can talk about as well. Books that are on the current threat of the far left, communism or otherwise, whatever it calls itself, they tend to be sky is falling reactionary, and also victimizing, as in, oh, look how bad it is. The far left is doing far left things. They're going to destroy everything. Oh no, subscribe to my channel, buy my merch. You get one coffee mug, you get your second one free.
Right.
That's the call to action. It's outrage porn, we like to call it.
Right.
Where there's no purpose to it beyond its own happening. There's nothing that's productive. There's nothing
And it can make them seem unbeatable too.
That's right. And it calls out their hypocrisy. And this is something that the right and the center have done for decades now. Oh, wow, look, rules from me, but not for thee. Wow, imagine if the roles were reversed. Wow, that's a terrible accident and coincidence.
Democrats are the real racists. That's another one.
Yes, the accidents and coincidence only ever go one way. They're actually the real racist. The hypocrisy is the point.
Yes.
Because it means they have power. If someone is allowed to get away with hypocrisy, if they use that, that is a sign of strength. As in, I can do whatever I want and hold us both to different standards, and you have to accept that. And the right consistently does. And the book Unhuman says, no. Tucker Carlson has said that the most masculine word in English language is no, and that no is a complete sentence.
Yeah.
And that is the call to action of Unhumans, is to say no. In any way, shape, or form that you have the capacity or the ability to, is to say no. We're not doing that. One of the characters whose reputation and memory we reframe for the book is the Spanish general Francisco Franco. And a quote of his that becomes a refrain in the book is, in English, "Wherever I am, there will be no communism." And that is the spirit that the book bequeaths upon our readers.
Yes.
Now, how the book came about was in 2016, right before the election, the presidential election, 2016 in October, I was in, of all places, New York City, in an Irish bar at 4 a.m. with some friends, and new friends. And one of them was a Canada-based director of documentaries and a film producer. And he was peppering me with questions about American politics, as Canadians are wont to do when you're having a beer with them in an Irish bar at 3 a.m. in New York City. And he was asking me, there's so much that's far right this, far right that, alt-right, all these things about your extreme right, your fringe right that are everywhere. How come nobody's talking about your far left? Didn't the far left kill way more people in the 20th century? And in previously than the far right did, if we're actually going to do a body count comparison? How come you guys never talk about that? Why is nobody concerned about there being far left? And I thought, you know what we should do? His name is Kurt. You know what we should do, Kurt? We should make a movie about that. Haha. And he goes, yeah, let's make a movie about that. Okay. And we did. We did. And the documentary is called Better Left Unsaid. It's won a few awards, independently released. I'm the executive producer, one of the executive producers of the film, and of course, Kurt is the director. It's available from most streaming platforms. It was released in 2021, and I had some significant creative input and direction and whatnot on it. And the purpose of the film is to ask the question: when the right faces off against their fringe element, they distance themselves as much as possible. The left looks at their fringe. It gives them power. They give them prestige. They reward them. Why? And what happens when they do? And that's the question set that Better Left Unsaid, the documentary, asks. In last December's early weeks, 2023, at the time of this recording, the influencer, the podcaster, the author, the journalist, Jack, that we're talking about, my friend Jack, he did a series called Chronicles of the Revolution, which was a kind of a podcast mini-series about various communist revolutions that are either little known, lesser known, or so misinformed and disinformed about that it's as if no one knows anything about them that's accurate.
Right.
Like the Spanish Civil War, for example. We
Absolutely.
have a whole chapter 5 of book Unhumans is about the Spanish Civil War. Lessons and insights from it as well. And I saw that podcast of Jack's, and I said, "Dude, have you seen my documentary about this stuff?" "No, I haven't." "Wow, we should do a book." "Okay, okay, let's do a book. Seriously." And fast forward a number of months, there's a treatment for this book idea. There's a proposal. There's a query letter, and then there's a book deal, and there's negotiation, and then there's an outline. There's research, and then there's the first draft, and so on and so forth. And then the book releases this July 2024, and it's the number one best-selling book in the country, and it's not even close. There's no close second when the book comes out, and it's Publishers Weekly bestseller, USA Today, New York Times bestseller as well. And the week of its release was the week between the attempted assassination of President Trump and the palace coup of Joe Biden as a
Oh
direct
my
consequence of
God.
the assassination attempt failing.
Right.
And the people reading the book are going, people getting thrown out of office by their own people, assassination attempts, inflammatory rhetoric, dividing the people, misinforming the world about what's really going on. Everything I'm reading in the news this week is these guys are talking about in this book. It's all in here. How do they know? And that, of course, parlayed itself into doing the next book together, which is about that consequential week between Butler, Pennsylvania, and the likely ghost-written tweet of President Joe Biden announcing unprecedentedly via social media
No
without video.
letterhead. No
Yes,
letterhead.
without
Nothing
letterhead.
official. It could have been as little as a Google Doc. And one of my theories about that actually is that, let's say they just uploaded it. What are you really going to do if you're Biden? Say
It's too
that
late at that
I'm
point.
running for president and I don't have control of my Twitter page, but I should run the country? There's nothing you can do. There's no move.
That's right. That's right. And everything surrounding that, immediately how the technology companies, from social media to search, together with the mainstream media allies and all left-wing influencers, immediately and permanently rebranded Kamala from being this likely in public overdrinker with some issues and extreme incompetence, unlike any vice president or any occupant of the White House like we've ever seen. And that was known and kind of dismissed and looked away from. Instantly, within minutes of Biden endorsing her, minutes, the entire party rallying around her, and a complete 180 of all recorded history about her was rewritten. She went from being 90+% turnover inside of her office, as the papers were describing how ineffective and inappropriate her leadership was with her people. Within minutes, that from, oh, she runs her office like a prosecutor, and some people are uncomfortable with that. It just shows that she's a big, strong woman.
And Biden had the same thing happen where you go from the next FDR to just the forgotten man of history. It was like they all but did the Soviet thing where they physically remove a guy from the picture.
Yes, and of course we write about that as well. How that when the left has power, all they can do at that point is eat themselves, eat their own. It's the image of the Ouroboros, the snake devour its own tail. And that is a powerful emblem of the far left when they gain power. And again, this is what they do. Now the right, unfortunately, they engage in purity spiraling, right? Where I'm more conservative than you. they try to be better at being the thing, and they try to outcompete one another on that, and it's a big mess where they're constantly dividing and conquering themselves rather hilariously and head shakingly. So the book came about, and it was perfectly timed, and also the contributor to the book, the foreword, was Stephen K. Bannon, and the week of the release of the book, he became a political prisoner, and everyone knows that.
Yeah.
And of course, we talk about political imprisoning and trumping up charges and whatnot inside of the book. We didn't know that was going to happen, of course, and yet it did. And so this is a book that uniquely reads the room. And so much of what had come about this past summer, we were not aware of because we were writing the book. We were coming up with it in December 2023, January 2024, February, very early part of March. Now, one thing that I will say is that 3 months prior to Trump picking J.D. Vance, our Ohio senator, we decided we were going to put his blurb first at the top of the back of the book because his was going to be the most important when the book came out that summer.
That was
Because of what
before
was going to
JD.
happen.
That was before he was picked.
That was 3 months before he was picked.
That's incredible.
Yes, wink, wink. Yes, and of course, the book's release became a story about him, and
Right.
I have to say, probably 50 major and minor media outlets, newspapers, blogs. There were 2 New York Times articles, a USA Today piece, a Bloomberg. I could go on and run down all the list of all of the mainstream outlets, journalists, and so on who were bashing the book by tying it to J.D. Vance and his endorsement. And the language they used was so interesting. They would say things like, "It has been uncovered that Senator Vance quietly endorsed," and they use this deceitful language. It's been uncovered. That's
Right.
on the back of the book. It's on the page on Amazon.
Right. It's not uncovered. We told everyone we could about it.
Yes, and they used the words like secretly, quietly. They're using adverbs, right? And adverbs are what journalists use to lie,
Mm-hmm.
and not just journalists, but public commentators and public figures. I recall there being a rather infamous female celebrity whose memoir released last year, who will go unnamed, but most people know who I'm talking about. She did, let's say, an image recreation tour, and in an interview, she said, "I literally wrote every word of this book myself." The very same day, her ghostwriter gave interviews to the press about the experience. Public figures use adverbs to lie. So if someone says, "I absolutely, literally did not," 2 lies. You're telling 2 lies
Right.
to me right now.
Right. Your
Okay,
command
so
of
what did you
language.
do exactly?
Yeah. 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 It's funny you mentioned Tucker because I was going to bring him up, and I just thought it was so interesting. We just saw the blowback. He had a conversation with this guy on Twitter, Martyr Made, Daryl Cooper, and I find it fascinating that for as overeducated as a people as we are, in 2024, Nazi is somehow still the worst thing you could ever be in the world. It's the only potent insult we have left in politics. Why isn't communist treated with that same level of toxic?
There's a saying that the winners write the history. That is not correct for communist history. The losers write communist history. And they recast themselves as victors. And by the way, they have done this for a very long time. There were a number of volunteers, socialist volunteers, who joined the international brigades during the Spanish Civil War to fight alongside the Soviet Union in the support of the communists in Spain. And the context of the Spanish Civil War is that a socialist regime had just taken power. This is 1930s Spain. A socialist regime had power in Spain, but they allowed, as the left does, they allowed their fringe element to do whatever they wanted.
Mm-hmm.
And at that time, it was roving bands of anarcho-communists who were going around burning down churches, sacking businesses, seizing farms, demanding that owners of property, landowners, landlords, exit immediately, give them their property, or be shot, they and their families. It was mass bloodshed in the countryside and in the cities. It was a disaster. But the socialists allowed their communist friends to do whatever they wanted. So this was happening. It was anarcho-tyranny. It's okay to break the law if you're one of us. Even if you didn't break the law, we'll accuse you of it and then charge you as if you did and punish you as if you did if you're not one of us. An us versus them situation.
Right.
This is what they do. And General Francisco Franco, together with his mates in the army, said no. Francisco Franco was a father. He brought Big Dad energy back to Spain. And he said to the socialist government, he said to the communist guerrilla warfare, basically, militias running around causing mayhem, he said, like a dad, no, we are not doing this. And he meant it. And he meant it. And he became, through the Spanish Civil War, a caudillo, which is effectively Spanish for the boss, or boss, right? And people will rewrite that history rather than say he led a military uprising in resistance to legalized tyranny. That is an accurate description of what happened. They will rewrite that and twist what happened and call him conducting a military coup and having a totalitarian dictatorship and being impressive and being a fascist and being like Spanish Hitler. That is how the communists wrote that history. Now, I mentioned the International Brigades volunteers. A number of them became disillusioned with the communist side and the socialist cause because they read the newspapers that were propaganda from the socialists. And the socialists would write about these grand epic battles defeating Franco's forces that had never happened.
Mm.
And talk about the grand victories that those fighting for peace, freedom, and equality. By the way, the left likes to use those labels to give themselves cover. Because
Right.
who's going to oppose peace, freedom, and liberty and equality and whatnot? Are you a bad person? Right? The French revolutionaries are talking about liberty, equality, and brotherhood while they're chopping everybody's heads off.
Right.
This is what they do. As the communist history was unfolding, it was being lied about. The exact opposite was happening. The same happened in Nicaragua, by the way, which you have a section later in the book on that, how American journalists were going there, coming back, and feeding the press, and via the press, the U.S. government, specifically Jimmy Carter, whose administration betrayed the anti-communist revolutionaries of Nicaragua, supporting the communists, as a direct result of American journalists lying about how bad it was under the communists. The communists in Nicaragua, like the Bible says, where Jesus refers to the enemy comes only to steal, kill, and destroy.
Yes.
That's what the far left does. They come only to steal, kill, and destroy. And the rest of the left generally lets them do that. Unfortunately, this is what they do. That was allowed to happen in large part because American journalists lied about it. We have a whole section in there on that. And that was not declassified for decades.
That reminds me so much of the 1930s with Walter Duranty, going to Ukraine and saying there's no starvation happening here. What's the problem? And this guy won a Pulitzer that somehow still stands to this day, based on completely, whether it was faked, fabricated, wish casted. It wasn't true. It wasn't what was happening, but it was rewarded at the very highest levels. The New York Times, the Pulitzer Prize. This is what they do. How did you come up with that? Because this is what they do. It's so potent, and it bridges from then to now and helps people understand that it's a single movement. Just because it takes on different characteristics or shapes in different countries, whether it's pink communism, black communism, rainbow communism, this is what they do. How did you come to learn the potency of that phrase?
So first of all, I learned that from a friend who has a really popular diet and fitness account on social media. At Red Pill Vegan is his name. Rather interesting character.
Okay.
At Red Pill Vegan on YouTube, Twitter, X, all the various ones. And I picked that phrase up from him. And the context of him using that is various diet influencer, fitness guru, health and wellness nuts out there. They will put out a absolutely wild claim with absolutely no backing, or they will take a screenshot of a study that happens to partly support their worldview or their preferred diet plan, and they will share it. It will go viral. And then if you go to the conclusion will say the opposite of what the person posting it screenshot of the abstract says it says. Or it will be a meta study, not a conclusive study.
Right.
For example. Or it will be a study of 11 people over a 2-week period. And Red Pill Vegan will share how this hilarious disinformation that is in support of a particular diet, how that's consistently what they do. And he consistently shows up in the replies to those posts with the full link to the study that's being lied about and posting the actual conclusion for it. And every time he gets blocked.
See, that's what we used to go to journalism for and to trusted sources for. And there used to be what NPR wants to be is what your friend is doing.
Yes. Now, I've consistently said that you, James, are the last journalist because this is the sort of thing that you are known to do in your reputation. There's so few who do what you do with the dedication that you do it. And it is quite funny that an anonymous poster online is doing the work of National Public Radio
It's incredible.
on his social media. Yes,
It's
yes.
incredible.
And it's this is what they do phrase I learned from him, where he would challenge someone and win easily by simply posting the facts. My friend at Red Pill Vegan will simply post the facts and get blocked over it. Meanwhile, millions of people run with this new idea that's totally false. And his response to witnessing that phenomenon over and over and over is, this is what they do. And I saw the power of that. What that phrase does, it is a hypnotic phrase, by the way. What it allows someone to do is to quell their outrage and transmute it into action.
Mm.
It goes from, how could they do that? And this anger, this sort of reactionary outrage.
Which is always impotent.
Yes. And it creates outrage porn.
Yeah.
And it also causes you to lose frame.
Mm.
And which now you
Yes.
pulled into their world and they're outraged.
Yes.
How do you do this? And you start to get argumentative and whatnot. And you lose moral authority and get emotional and angry. And it's not good. Versus, they're doing it again. This is what they do. Which is a recognition that what you're witnessing is part and part. It's not an accident. It's not a bug. It's not an oops. It's part of their power play to do this regularly. That you're not dealing with rational, logical, reasonable people. You're dealing with zealots.
Mm.
And what that does when you carry it into a political conversation is it transmutes outrage into action. When you understand that, well, imagine if the roles were reversed. Yeah, imagine. And then actually reverse them.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, really? We can do that? When you have this is what they do, it's a call and response. By the way, this is what they do. And then they say every single time, which you do throughout the book. It's to ingrain that. It's to train people when they see the left being the left, not to outrage over it, not to freak out, not to get emotional, not to get angry. But it's a confirmation that you've seen this before. You'll see it again unless you stop it.
You know, it's funny, the Michigan football team last year, Harbaugh gets suspended before the Penn State game, gets suspended through the Ohio State game. So everyone's thinking they're going to lose. And then, like, this is announced like the day of the game, or maybe the day before, but super right before the game, which is at Penn State. And so the players said, bet. Like, all right, you fired, you suspended our coach, you sidelined our guy, you tried to stack it against us. Bet. Like, I'm just going to take it, and I'm not going to whine about it going forward. We're just going to figure it out. And they turned something that could have been an unraveling into an empowerment.
Exactly. Yes. What I've observed about reactionary right-wing movements in response to communism is it is based on that outrage that gets carried away and it becomes destructive. The reactionary right-wing movement becomes destructive. And it's something like, I'm going to take you out even if it takes me out.
Right.
It's Sherlock Holmes grabbing Moriarty and jumping off the cliff with him. If you've ever seen the famous drawing of the original Arthur Conan Doyle, both of them jumping to their deaths together, and then fans were outraged and readers were outraged at the turn of the century. So then he made up the story that they didn't actually die and whatever. But that is the reactionary right who is carried away and loses frame and becomes emotional. They grab the villain and jump off the cliff with him. Mm-hmm. That's the reactionary right. And we all can think of a few examples of characters like that in history who took their entire society and jumped off the cliff with the left. And that is what we are absolutely advising against, because this is a book that is primarily written for fathers. Fathers, we have a stake in the future. When we go from being simply males to being men, fatherhood enters that. And we see the future. We realize that our genetic legacy and heritage is going to have other people involved in it. And we realize that we have a responsibility for creating the best environment for the longest term we possibly can. So we're not interested in destroying everything and blowing it up and bringing it to ruin and rubble. What we are thinking about is, how can we protect and provide? How can we protect from those who would steal, kill, and destroy our children? And how can we provide a safe and prosperous future to them? And that is a unifying message, unless you want to steal, kill, and destroy.
Right.
And if you look at who opposes that message, that's who wants to do it. That's who's coming for your kids. That's who, in the case of Springfield, Ohio, they're coming for your cats.
We'll get you out of here on this one, Joshua. It's kind of a two-parter. So I see kind of two approaches going forward. I see risks in both, and I'd like you to light the path in front of us. One, I see a great risk in doing what we're doing. I just came from a place where it's in their values and culture that we presume the goodwill of our opponents. I see the obvious risks in assuming that your opponents view the world as you do, because when they don't, and you think you're having a debate and they're trying to kill you, obviously you come into battle unprepared. Then on the other hand, I say, well, if communism is so powerful, can we use the tools of the humans, the unhumans, against them? But then is there a risk that, as C.S. Lewis said, we eventually become what we pretend to be? What's the way forward?
Yes. So there are 2 points, and that can cover both of these. The concern that, we want to give the benefit of the doubt. Understand that this is a war of the worldviews. Senator Joseph McCarthy, whose legacy we reframe in the book, and his work with Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s father, Robert F. Kennedy Sr., their anti-communist work together, McCarthy said it was based on this fact, that there is a great clash in civilization, and it is between Christianity and atheistic communism.
Yes.
Christianity says that you are the sum of your deeds. You as an individual. You are made in the image and likeness of God, and you are judged based on what you did. There is no blood debt or ancestral debt or anything like that. You are what you do. That is how you are to be judged as an individual.
Or ancestral, they can't absolve you and they can't bury you. Not the sins of the father. It is your own scorecard that's kept.
That's right. Atheistic communism, cultural Marxism, wokeness, identity politics, intersectionality is all collectively anti-Christian, because it says you are not your deeds. You are the deeds of your group. You are the deeds of your class. You are the deeds of your race. You are, or your sexual orientation. That's who you are. And that is fundamentally unhuman, because it strips a person of their being made in the image and likeness of God, so that you feel better about stealing, killing, and destroying. And that is the worldview that Christian civilization is up against. You're going to give that the benefit of the doubt? The enemy comes only to steal, kill, and destroy.
Right.
I don't think Jesus could have been more clear on that. You're going to give that the benefit of the doubt? No, I don't think so. Now, what prevents stealing, killing, and destroying? We make in the book a grand point about the fact that a nuclear World War III was avoided through atomic diplomacy, which is, in effect, if you nuke us, we're going to nuke you way harder.
Right.
So they didn't nuke us because they were afraid of getting nuked back.
Mutual assured destruction.
That's right. And that reciprocity protects a civilization. We learned this many thousands of years ago with the very first civilizations. In fact, the oldest and longest code of law is the Code of Hammurabi from the Babylonian civilization. And that code was based on reciprocity. The sin you commit against someone else, the crime you commit against someone else, is now going to be committed to you. And that was a deterrent. So that you could do what? You could protect your kids, you could protect your family, you could protect the innocent, and you could provide a safe, clean environment for them to grow up and thrive and become wonderful, upstanding citizens. And protect them from those who would steal, kill, and destroy. If you steal, it will be stolen from you. If you destroy, you will be destroyed. If you kill, you will be killed. Any questions? And that legal yet forceful reciprocity manifests through big dad energy. Wherever I am, there will be no communism.
Right.
No is a complete sentence.
Beautiful. Joshua, I want to thank you. If you do have time for one more second, tell us Bulletproof. The bullet meant for Donald Trump hits Joe Biden. When can we buy it? What are we going to learn in it? I am like, this book is a work of art, from the cover to what you've uncovered to the way it's written in an extremely accessible way. And if you take that same approach to Bulletproof, like, why isn't it in my hands right now? Like, when can I get my hands on Bulletproof? And what would you have people know about it?
Yes, Bulletproof is about the most consequential week in American political history. The attempted assassination of Donald J. Trump, and how that directly caused an actual coup d'etat of a sitting president, which we've never seen before. Or have we? That book, it covers those 9 days in July, and it also covers all the before and the aftermath and the ramifications, and the fact that we argue, and this is what is going to give readers goosebumps, we argue that it is virtually impossible that this was not an inside job. The conservatives in the media, the influencers, they'll say things like, how could these security lapses happen? How could someone with a rangefinder in plain view, a rifle, long-barreled rifle in plain view, a AR-15 style rifle, how could this security lapse happen where he's known to law enforcement for more than 90 minutes before the shooting? How could he get off 8 shots? How could he be that close? How could this happen? Oh, heads will roll. Oh, we need to hire and we need to fire people and hire new ones. We need to investigate. We need disciplinary action. The right took that bait, hook, line, and sinker. This is not a question of how could this have happened? How could this happen?
Right.
It's, why was this allowed to happen, James? That is the question the book asks, and it's a question the book answers. And it's going to give readers goosebumps. It's going to give you sweaty palms. It might make you feel a little pale white afterwards and have cold, clammy skin. Is how you're going to feel reading this. But it's necessary. It had to be done. And it's also the first book that's on the Trump assassination attempt. It's the first one that's out. It's available now in pre-order, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and elsewhere. It looks like there's going to be significant resistance to the book being out from big tech, from big media, and from big Dems. Massive resistance. And that just goes to show how important it is.
You're not supposed to have the first book out about Trump being shot. One of these guys is supposed to come out with it a year later, after the election, when it doesn't matter anymore, and get this big New York book deal. It was not supposed to be you guys. You guys jumped the line.
That's right. That's right. We happen to know that there are other books that are in the process of being written, and even that are scheduled for publication. One before the election, other one before the election that we know of. But we're first because that's what we do.
Joshua, where can people find you and learn more about you?
My best shenanigans are over on Twitter, now called X, at Joshua Lisec, Lisec. And my day-to-day world that has made all of this possible is lisecghostwriting.com.
Awesome. Joshua, thank you so much. I'm going to be in touch. We'd like to send you a Make News Local Again shirt, but thank you for taking the time.
My pleasure, James. Thank you for having me on.